Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I want to talk about some of the launch content for Battlefield 5. We already know quite a bit through what EA has released, and also an accidental leak revealing some of the initial maps and modes, which confirms 6 maps so far. Since Battlefield games usually launch with 10 maps total, I think we can use a combination of concept art, trailers, and blog posts to figure out what the remaining maps are going to be. First of all, let's look at this image that was released on one of Mashdate's videos a while ago that has been circulating the Reddit community recently. This image shows 3 operations revolving around 6 maps. The first thing shown on this graphic is Narvik, and it shows Airborne and the Breakthrough game modes as the first 2 game modes. Because we played these during the closed alpha and this information came out prior to the EA reveal and the gameplay stuff, it's likely that the rest of the information shown here is also accurate. However, we never played the second map for this Narvik operation called Fjell 457. Now, Bjornfjell, which I'm probably pronouncing incorrectly, was going to be the final stand of the Germans in Norway, but due to France's retreat in Europe, most of the Allied forces were pulled away and the final Norwegian assaults were undermanned and ultimately failed to remove the Germans. So for the map Fjell 457, I think we can expect some mountain village fighting in the snow, possibly ski fighters, although that might just be relegated to some of the single player campaign stuff, and likely the Bjornfjell railway station. Visually, it'll probably be very similar to the Narvik map, but just higher up in the mountains. Like if you look off in the distance of this map here, up in the big hilly areas, that's probably where you're going to be fighting. The next maps shown in the image are Rotterdam 1 and Devastation. We've already seen some concept art of Rotterdam, which was an insanely intense battle over the Belgian city. It began as a German assault. The defending forces proved determined to hold the city, and Germans called in a massive air raid that leveled 25,000 buildings. This, however, did not eliminate the defending forces, and fighting continued in the rubble of the city, but many of the defenders ultimately lost their positions due to out-of-control fires from the bombing. So we already know that the invasion and counterattacks in Rotterdam are going to be one of the maps here, with a mostly intact city, and I believe Devastation will portray the post-bombing raid version of Rotterdam. Both the name of the map and the fact that the first map is titled Rotterdam 1 seems to indicate that this will be the progression of events. I would expect dark and dirty fighting with massive fires as scenery. You'll also notice that the final stand game mode here has a low health in brackets, so it could indicate a one-shot kill type of environment with single elimination. Finally, the image shows a third grand operations that will take place in Africa. Hellfire Pass was part of Operation Battle Axe. Also, Battlefield 1942 featured a map representing Hellfire Pass, but they actually named it Battle Axe. This will involve intense infantry, tank, and airplane combat in the desert, largely between the British and the German factions. The first day of Grand Operations indicates an initial airdrop and then a second day of Frontlines. And if you played the Battle Axe map in 1942, Frontlines seems like it would make a lot of sense for that style of map. The second map in this operation is called Fox Hunt. Now, the name doesn't really indicate the specific location of the next map. Fox Hunt is probably a reference to the nickname of the German commander Rommel, as he was called the Desert Fox. His flanking tactics proved to be devastating during the African campaign. And if we're going chronologically, after the initial assaults of the Battle Axe campaign in the Hellfire Pass, there were numerous assaults and counter assaults on both sides. Because the game mode being played on this map is a new mode as indicated by the graphic, I could guess that it might be a King of the Hill style mode with changing objective locations. This has been a mode DICE has played around with in previous games, so seeing it become part of a Grand Operations mode is both likely, and I think it would be pretty cool. The map could be many different locations, but perhaps the Hafid Ridge could make the most sense given the style of combat that was fought in this location. The Hafid Ridge was a series of 3 ridges where the Germans and British won and lost multiple engagements against each other. Titling the map Fox Hunt could indicate that the British were hunting the Desert Fox, which was initially the plan of the battles here, but there was a lot of back and forth fighting in this area, so it could just indicate a lot of fast moving and fighting that changes around the map frequently. Again, there could be many different locations of this second map, but I feel like I can say with certainty that it'll definitely be in Africa as part of the African campaign, and probably involve some pretty big tank battles, as that was the majority of the style of fighting in Africa. Now, so far that's 6 of the probable 10 maps that will ship with Battlefield 5, so that potentially leaves 4 more maps. We do, however, already know that battles around Esco will be shown, as the reveal trailer showed a battle that took place during an assault on a bridge that went over the Esco River, or at least I believe that's what it is. If this map is also part of an operation campaign, it's possible that we will see additional battles around the Arras, probably involving large armored divisions in the north of France. There are many assaults and counter-assaults fought early in the war in this area, so imagine scenery similar to what we saw in the reveal trailer, again with plenty of tank fights. Perhaps this image here showing a wide open field and tanks is an indication of one of those battles. Now, if those predictions are right, that would be 8 out of 10 maps likely to launch with Battlefield 5, and the last 2 I think we can narrow down to battles fought around or at Dunkirk. Dunkirk has already been alluded to as a location in an official Battlefield 5 blog post, so it's likely there will be air combat, possibly naval combat, and tank and infantry fighting around that beachhead in a Dunkirk style map. Now again, if Dunkirk is a part of a 2-map operation, there are likely 2 directions we could see after this. If Dunkirk is the first map of an operation campaign, the second map will likely be the Battle of Britain, which would be massive aerial battles fought between British and German aircraft. Bombers and fighters shooting each other down in the hundreds, with the Germans hitting British airfields. This was actually a DLC map for Battlefield 1942, but wasn't particularly popular just because of how much it relied on air combat, and anyone on the ground was generally pretty bored. As much as I would like to see the Battle of Britain as a map, I think it's unlikely DICE would make a main map that focuses so heavily on aerial combat, since many players can't fly planes very effectively. Then again, since this is DICE's version of World War II, perhaps they will include a fictional German land invasion element, or even a massive naval battle, but who knows how far they're going to stray from the actual events of these battles. What's potentially more likely is that the Dunkirk map will actually be the part 2 of an operation campaign, and that another map will feature something like the French Maginot Line, featuring the Germans fighting through hundreds of concrete bunkers and gun emplacements, or perhaps featuring some of the large tank battles leading up to the Dunkirk evacuation, like the Battle of Gembloux or the Battle of Hanu, which was one of the largest tank battles of the early war campaign. Think lots of tanks and lots of trees. Could make for some epic map destruction and fighting. Again, because DICE is focusing chronologically on the events of the war, I think these are the most likely battles that we will see with the launch of the game. It's also possible that we would see some of the fighting in Italy, but based on what has already been revealed, I think what I've already mentioned is probably most likely. Russian, Japanese, American fighting, and probably Italian fighting will come in later DLC. You could easily see that broken up into the Soviet DLC, Allied Invasion DLC, which would be America getting into the ground fighting in Europe with D-Day and the rest of the Allied forces, the Pacific DLC with American and Japanese fighting on islands and massive naval battles. Road to Rome was one of the DLCs for Battlefield 1942, so it's entirely possible that we will see something that focuses on the Italian campaign, and then maybe even a secret weapons DLC at some point where DICE starts to get a bit crazy with some of the available weapons. Anyway, what do you guys think about my launch predictions for the maps? Also, what do you think about the chronological release of World War II content? As someone who enjoys the historical aspect of World War II games, I can appreciate that, since it focuses on battles that are lesser known from World War II, like the Norwegian battles and such. From a marketing hype standpoint, launching a World War II game without things like D-Day, Stalingrad, Berlin, the Pacific fighting, it's a pretty big blow to the initial appeal or the initial hype. Perhaps DICE will spread out their marketing focus and their marketing efforts more over the lifetime of the game, since they're going for the game as a service route to try and have a strong marketing presence over the longer period of time, well, when some of their more desirable content is released. Because you can better believe it, I think Stalingrad and D-Day are probably some of the two most desired battles of a World War II campaign, and launching a game without either of them could be seen as a bit of a mix-up or a tricky situation for DICE to be in. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I look forward to reading your comments down below, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.